Hello everyone, my name is Caio Salgado. I work at Klabin and I am in charge of the biotechnology department. I'm going to invite you to listen to our talk a little bit. We're going to tell you about our area, our applications, and how important it is for the forestry industry, and how Klabin sees these future applications and the current applications for the business. And for us to get into that, and for us to discuss biotech a little bit and the importance of it in society and its applications and how important it has become, especially now as of 2020, I'm going to invite Alexandre Alonso. He's the general manager of Embrapa Agroenergy, and we're going to debate on the topic a little bit. And just to kickstart the conversation, what is biotechnology, right? How is it a part of our lives? And how is biotech applied on different areas and different sectors of our lives? Well, basically, biotech is the conflation of different biological sciences with different technologies with the objective of producing a product or a process. So if you think about it, if you analyze it in our lives, in our day-to-days, biotech is really a part of all of it since we wake up until we go to bed, whether it's in basic processes when it comes to not directly products, but the formulation of products, whether it's in our breakfast, in the bread that we eat in the morning, or the ham that we put on that bread, or even in the process, or a medication that we take, maybe insulin. Biotech is directly related to these products that I mentioned, and it's directly related to some of the techniques and some of the services like genetic identity tests, paternity tests, or even assisted human reproduction. There is a broad range of applications for biotech. There are many facets to it, and to understand a little more how this biotechnology is applied to the forestry sector and how it's applied to the Brazilian agribusiness, I'm going to ask Alexandre here. He's going to help me dive into those topics. And I'm going to ask you a question, Alexandre. What is your take of biotechnology today at Embrapa? From an Embrapa perspective, what is your take on biotechnology? And what is your take on biotech for Brazil? Great. So, hello everyone. Again, I am Alexandre Alonso. I work at Embrapa Agroenergy. To me, it's a huge pleasure to be here present in the Innova Klabin Festival. It's great to be able to debate a topic that I hold very dear, which is biotech. When Caio invited me for us to have that chat about biotechnology, what jumped to me was exactly what Caio said initially, which is how does biotech transform our lives and transform people's lives? Oftentimes, we don't really see it that clearly. I often say that we usually associate technology overall to a mobile phone or maybe a notebook or any such tool that we are used to using for video conference and things like that. But one of the areas that has the most technology application, without question, is the crop and livestock industry. And that definitely has a role in biotech. So I just want to touch on that discussion, Kyle, and let's talk a little bit about the practical results of applying biotechnology, right? So the first thing that I want to tell you is that, well, look, if you look at the crop and livestock industry in Brazil, what it is today and what it was a few years ago, it is undeniable that we have taken huge leaps. We increased our production and our yield in a very expressive way. And this is a moment that cannot be attributed, for example, to the increase of our acreage, of our planted area. Our increase in the planted area was not as large as our increase in production and yield. So the increase in production that we had is actually a direct result of applying technologies, and that these are field technologies. Brazil went from being a food importer. I think many people that are watching this might remember back in the day, Brazil used to import a lot of its food products. And today, Brazil is one of the main exporters. We export many of the main agricultural commodities and agricultural derived products. And not only in volume, but we but we improved a lot of the quality of our products. If you think about crop and livestock farming, we have more products, more variety, more quality, and we don't have an effect of seasonality, for example. This is reflected on the price of basic food items, which have been dropping through time. And a lot of that is a credit to biotechnology. And a great deal of biotechnology we can attribute to those types of technologies. I mean, you just described biotech. Today we have new varieties, new animal species and plant species that are way more productive, that are way more resilient thanks to biotechnology. Plants were bred and improved, and they have certain characteristics to meet some of the markets that we have. And this is a key thing for the future. When you think about the Brazilian agriculture market, we are going through a very, an intense, sustainable intensification. We are using less resources, I mean, less area and more resources, and we have new processes, like you said, and this will continue. Biotech is going to be playing a key role in the future as well. I want to say how Embrapa sees biotech. I think it's undeniable that. I'm sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to ask you something. It would be good to know how Embrapa sees this and how Embrapa has applied and helped leverage the sector. How has Embrapa leveraged the sector and what benefits we stand to gain through those biotech techniques? We can focus on yield and generate products to society, right? That's right. So, like I said, Embrapa has a very significant role for Brazilian agriculture. We usually say that Embrapa plays a role which is almost like a locomotive for the train tracks. We work with universities and other partners to develop research and technologies in areas where the technology risk is too high or where the investment is tough. There are maybe a private company would struggle to make this sort of investment. So we do basic research, we do applied research, and we try to pave the way to facilitate the access of other companies to the market. And Embrapa specifically, from a biotech perspective, we've always been active. Embrapa today, we have a nice portfolio. We have several research portfolios that are organized like that. And specifically, we have one that is called Biotech Agro, which is advanced biotechnology applied to the agribusiness. Basically, here's what we develop in this portfolio, in this type of research here at Embrapa. Obviously, we have a number of collections. We have a collection of plants, animals, and microorganism species, and these are screened with techniques that we can also relate to biotechnology. We try to identify new traits, new characteristics, and new components. And we work by developing new agri inputs. We have seen a very prominent movement of agriculture. We have the new bio inputs, which is products for the agro production. So we have new strains of bacteria for biological control and things like that. We are discovering new genes, interference RNA technology to develop new plant varieties. Recently, we have two new CRISPR technology projects, which yielded a Nobel Prize in chemistry because of the genome editing technologies where you can change certain characteristics in plants. We have GMOs, we have molecular markers, we have strategies for genome selection, and all of that can be applied in breeding programs. So from the scope of this project, we have a very broad portfolio, and we have applications in a string of species that goes from lettuce all the way to cattle. So it's the whole 9 yards, really. Embrapa works in many of those crops and species, and obviously this is part of our program of forest. We have a program of forestry species as well. So if I am to summarize it, I think the role of a company like Embrapa is to develop new technologies, new research, new cutting-edge research, and we are always trying to stay ahead of the curve and work in areas that have a major technology risk that take longer to mature. and we use a broad range of technologies. We develop a broad range of technologies that goes all the way from plants, all the way to crisps, GMOs, and many other types. So we have been doing this in a very, very strong way at the company. So we have a specific portfolio called
Legal.
Biotech Agro for this reason.
Eu acho interessante, né? Porque
I think
toda
that's really
essa gama de
interesting because this
aplicação,
broad
né? Tanto
range
no
of
setor
application,
público quanto a gente
you see that in the
observa
public
no setor
sector and
privado,
the private
o
sector,
objetivo
and
é
the
único,
objective
né?
is
A
the
gente
same,
sempre está trabalhando para
right?
quê?
We are
Para
always
produzir
working
mais
to
em
produce
menos
more in
espaço.
less
Uma vez
space.
que a gente
Once
produz
we
mais, a gente
produce
consegue
more, we are
conservar
able to
mais
preserve more areas
e a gente
and we are
consegue
able
melhorar
to
vidas,
improve
né? A gente
lives,
consegue melhorar
right? We are able
todo um
to
ambiente,
improve an
todo um
environment and
ecossistema
an
que tem
ecosystem that
correlação à
is
nossa
that says a
sociedade.
lot
E
about
no
our
setor
society.
florestal,
And in the
a
forestry sector,
biotecnologia, principalmente aqui na
biotechnology,
Klabin,
especially
ela
here in
assume uma
Klabin,
faceta
has
muitas
a
vezes ligada ao
is really
melhoramento genético.
is really
A gente
connected
sabe
to
que o
genetic
melhoramento
breeding.
genético,
We
né, é
know
um
that
conceitinho
genetic breeding,
básico, né?
which
É a
is a
arte, a ciência de
basic
transformar
concept,
as
it's
plantas
the art
a
and
partir de
science of
torná-las úteis ao
transforming plants
homem,
and
né?
making them useful to
Aqui
men.
na
Here at
Klabin,
Klabin,
basicamente
basically
nesse
that's the
conceito.
concept,
A gente trabalha aqui
right?
na Klabin
So
com
here in Klabin,
o
we
melhoramento das
work with
espécies
forestry
florestais, no
species
sentido da
breeding.
arte, no
We
sentido
work
de
with this art
procurar
to,
os
of
melhores
trying to
rebotes, as
look for
melhores
the best
plantas, ou
genotypes and the
seja,
best
aqueles que têm
plants.
um fit
So in other words,
que tem uma
ones that
aplicação
are a
direta numa
fit
maior
and that can be
produtividade.
more
Se eu tenho
yieldable.
uma
So if
planta
you
que ela
have a plant
produz
that
mais,
produces more,
para mim é
is
legal,
great
porque
to
eu
me
consigo
because
gerar
I'm
mais
able to
produtos lá na
generate more
fábrica.
products in my
Mas é
factory.
claro que
But
esse
of course,
melhoramento,
this breeding
ele não
process
é, ele deixa um pouco dessa parte da arte, né? E torna-se muito
ceases to be an
ciência,
art and
muitas
becomes
vezes
a
quando a gente
science.
consegue enxergar ele nas
Oftentimes we
facetas da
see it from a
biotecnologia.
lens
Aqui
of
a gente aplica
biotechnology.
biotecnologia
So right here we work
focado em
with
marcadores
biotechnology,
moleculares,
we
visando a
work with
seleção precoce, uma vez que a gente
molecular
consegue, por
markers.
exemplo, identificar
So,
uma região da
we
planta, uma
identify
região
a
única
genic
ali,
region of the
que ela
plant
infere em maior
that can be
produtividade, a
more
gente pode
yieldable.
estar
So we
selecionando
select those parts and we
produzindo
produce
e
based
trazer
on that,
plantas, né, com
and we
maior
create plants that
produtividade,
are more that have better yield.
muito ligada à área de
And this
cultura
is
de
really connected
tecidos.
to the
Essa
fabric
cultura de tecidos
manufacturing
a
as
gente
well.
pode aplicar diversos
We can
projetos,
mention
alguns clones que
many
não
projects. We
enraizam
have
de
some
alta
clones that
produtividade,
do
a gente
not
pode
set
trazer para o
roots.
laboratório, a gente
We
pode
bring those
ter
varieties
diversas
to the lab
aplicações
and we have so many
biotecnológicas, né?
biotech
Principalmente
applications,
focadas aqui em
ones that
temas
are
de cultura de
focused on
tecidos.
the
Sempre
fabrics
focado em quê?
industry. We
Melhorar a
always try to
produtividade.
add
Uma
yield.
vez que a gente tem
When
plantas
we
mais
have more
produtivas,
yieldable
a gente
plants, more
consegue
productive plants,
trazer
we are able to
ganhos, né?
produce more gain.
Ganhos
We
para a
produce
empresa.
better
E
yields to the
também a gente
company.
pode
And
também
also,
trazer
we can also
características
work
para as
we
plantas
can
que
also
pelo melhoramento
introduce
convencional a gente não consegue
characteristics for
incorporar.
plants that
A
we
gente pode
cannot do
preparar, por
in traditional
exemplo,
breeding.
para um futuro a empresa para uma situação de uma diversidade
We can
climática,
prepare
ou
companies
seja,
for
plantas com
climate
maior
diversity, so plants
resistência
that are
ao
more
déficit hídrico,
resistant to water
plantas
deficit,
muitas vezes
you
mais
know,
focadas
plants
em
that are
futuro, que
focused on a future
a gente
that
sabe
might not
que
be here
o
yet,
ambiente
but
está
we know that
mudando
the
e a
environment is
gente também
changing,
pode
so we
preparar
can
essas
definitely
plantas aí
get
para as próximas
get those
mudanças aí
plants ready for the next
nos
few
próximos
changes in
tempos
the coming
futuros
futures.
vindos, né?
So,
E
what
para
about
você,
you,
Alexandre,
Alexandre? I mean,
como
what
que você
is your
enxerga
take on
aí
that?
a
What do you
aplicação,
think
né,
about
da
the application
biotecnologia
of
no setor
biotechnology in the
florestal?
forestry
Como que
industry?
você enxerga essa aplicação
What do you think
da
about
biotecnologia no setor
biotech in
florestal e
forestry,
quais que são os
and what
ganhos
are
que ele
some of the
pode
gains
trazer, né?
that are possible?
Legal. Eu acho que você já abordou
I
bem,
think
né,
you
no
tackled
sentido
this very well.
a aplicação
I
de
think the
biotecnologia
application of
com essas,
biotechnology
com a
with
finalidade
this
de
objective
desenvolver
to
novos
develop
materiais
new
genéticos,
genetic
novas
materials,
células,
new
vamos dizer assim,
biomasses, so to
para
speak,
aplicações
for
industriais é
industrial
certamente
application is
dos
definitely one of the
carros-chefes
hallmarks of
por
the
exemplo, da
company.
aplicação de biotecnologia na Embrapa. A gente tem
That's
aqui
what
na
we do at Embrapa.
agroenergia, por exemplo, o
In the
desenvolvimento, a gente
agro-energy
tem
field,
especificamente um eixo
we
de
are
pesquisa
developing
de inovação
a
aplicada que é
research
desenvolver,
axis, which
aplicar
is to apply
biotecnologia para
biotech
melhorar a
to improve
biomassa
biomass.
para aplicações
That's for
industriais. E aí
industrial
vai desde
applications, and
da
that has to
característica
do
da arquitetura das
with the
plantas
plant
até a questão
architecture and
de
characteristic all the
resiliência,
way
né?
to its resilience. So we
Materiais
have genetic
genéticos contra
materials for
seca,
drought
tolerância
tolerance,
a outros
tolerance to
estresses,
other
como, por exemplo,
stresses,
questão de toxidez
for
de
example,
alumínio, etc.
aluminum
O solo, por exemplo,
toxicity.
tem
There
algumas
are
características
some
ácidas,
soils
então, para
have
permitir
very
a expansão de
acid
raízes e
characteristics,
permitir
so in order to
desenvolvimento
expand
celular
our
com êxito.
production, sometimes we have to plant in
Resistência
acid
a
soils,
insetos, pragas, por exemplo, em
resistance
várias
to
culturas
pests
isso
and
acaba sendo
weeds,
problema
insects,
gigante
this is a
também,
major problem
uma
as well,
série de
nematodes
então
and
acho que
others. So I
essa
think that
faceta de
facet of
biotecnologia, a gente chama de
biotechnology
biotecnologia vegetal. E
is
aí
what we
vai
call
entrar
vegetable
também a
biotechnology. and that has to do with the molecular markers, genomic selection, genomic selection, breeding, fabrics. I mean, all of that is included, and this is definitely one of the main facets of biotechnology. Now, let me just bring your attention to something, Caio. You know, most of the times, vegetable biomass, this biomass that we are producing and developing with those biotechnologies, these are biomasses that are quite complex from a structural point of view and from a chemical point of view. Here's what I mean by that. It means that oftentimes we can think about new uses for this same biomass. So it's like, how can I transform that sugar or that polymer or oil and things like that into other products, right? So traditionally, we produce food, we produce fibers, we produce energy, but we also have been producing what we call bioproducts or bio inputs. And with that, we open another interesting door in biotech, which is industrial biotechnology. So how can we produce new bacteria, new biological process, so we can allow for the conversion of this raw material into new products? So we have a line that is focused on industrial biotechnology. So you have industrial processes that use biotechnology to be able to develop those new bioproducts. And in comes a very interesting concept that I think it's great for the forestry industry, which is biorefinery. When you have a single industrial plant, or maybe in modular sections, but you can produce many products with biomass. So that's analog to the petroleum refinery. You have multiple products coming from there. So when you think about it, when you think about biorefineries for the forestry industry, for example, you can think about paper, cellulose, energy, biofuels, renewable chemicals. You can think about new materials, new compounds that we call the consultative blocks that can be used for other uses, for other purposes as well. And we can promote somehow, some way, we can promote this gradual migration from a non-renewable economic model to an economic model that is based on renewable sources. That's what people are deeming circular economy, you know, carbon economy, and etc. So this is really interesting because from a chemical point of view and also from a biotech point of view, we can produce almost any chemical product, almost anything that we have that comes from fossil fuels, from non-renewable sources. We can do that in a biological renewable way. And that's where this new facet comes in, which is industrial biotechnology. In the forestry sector, it's really interesting to assess the vegetable biotechnology impact for breeding, you know, just the production of these materials, and also the industrial biotech aspect, so which is how to convert this biomass into a broad range of products. This is no easy task. I mean, that calls for a very strong proximity between science and institutions and the companies that work in the productive sector. And by the way, I congratulate Klabin for this initiative because that's what we need to foster. We need to bring institutions closer, ones that do research and technology development, with the institutions that do innovation, that develop new products, that put those products in the market. So if those two areas have R&Ds and efforts that can work together, we can now co-develop new solutions. We can co-create new technologies and new applications, which is wonderful. I mean, this is a universe that is absolutely extraordinary. So I think this is really, really relevant. We have to think about those two facets, biotechnology and how to bring all these actors together in a single ecosystem of innovation. And I think this title, Innovation as a Purpose, is right on the money because it's really, that's the proposal, that's the intention.
E eu gostaria, Alexandre, de te
Well,
agradecer.
Alexandre, I would like to say
Eu
thanks
acho
to you.
que a nossa conversa aqui,
This is a great
e
conversation
eu acho
here.
que foi uma felicidade muito grande, né, convidar você
I'm
como
really happy
diretor-geral
to
da
have
Embrapa
invited
Bioenergia,
you
até
from
pelos
Embrapa to
objetivos,
talk
né,
to us.
da
When
Klabin,
you
os
look at
objetivos
Klabin's
com ciência e
objectives and when you think
biotecnologia,
about
que tem essa
biotechnology
pegada de
and
sustentabilidade,
sustainability,
eu penso que
I
casa
think that
muito,
is
principalmente quando a
very
gente
much
pensa
in
em
line,
inovação.
especially when it comes to
E a
innovation.
gente vê que tem os propósitos, os interesses
The
são bem,
purpose and the interests are right on the mark. So I think we can speak the same language. So I want to say thank you very much, Alexandre. Thank you for being here. Thank you for talking to us. And we appreciate it. We appreciate your participation. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks, Klabin, for the invitation. I'm really happy to be a part of this festival. So I can speak on behalf of Embrapa. We are always available, and we are going to continue the conversation for sure. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandre.